Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We had a good discussion this morning about the work that we have undertaken on behalf of the American people, with a focus on continuing to put people over politics, lower cost, better paying jobs, and safer communities. Under President Joe Biden's leadership, almost 10 million good paying jobs have been created during less than 2 years in office. These are jobs that will allow the American people to be able to provide for their families, educate their children, hopefully purchase a home, and ultimately retire with grace and with dignity. Gas prices have continued to go down now for 14 consecutive weeks. And further help is on the way as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, where we're going to lower energy costs, lower healthcare costs, which we will achieve through strengthening the Affordable Care Act, and of course, drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. On the other side, extreme MAGA Republicans continue to put politics over people, power over people, and refuse to put the American people above their own base political needs. And that's unfortunate. They are extreme in every possible way. And we're going to continue to make sure that that contrast is presented to the American people over the few weeks that we have remaining here in Washington, D.C., and when we return back home to our districts throughout the nation. Vice Chair Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's that contrast again that is coming up as Republicans ratchet up their attacks on American democracy by refusing to say that they'll accept the results of free and fair upcoming elections. House Democrats are stepping up for the rule of law and our country. This week, the House will pass the Bipartisan Presidential Elections Reform Act. House Administration Chair Zoe Lofgren, along with Representative Liz Cheney, two colleagues who are knowledgeable not just about protecting democracy, but also about the Constitution and protecting this country, have been working together to craft these strong reforms to the Electoral Count Act that will help protect a peaceful transfer of power. This is more than a quick fix. This is about strengthening our democracy. To craft this legislation, they pulled directly from testimony and evidence that was gathered during the Select Committee's work in the investigation of the reforms that will prevent another January 6th. But we should also be very clear. Donald Trump wanted to prevent a peaceful transfer of power. He was told that fake electors were illegal and unconstitutional, and he went ahead and supported them anyway. Our democracy is only as strong, as steadfast as the people who are elected to govern. The contrast between House Democrats' commitment to our Constitution and the American people versus extreme MAGA Republicans' commitment to protecting their own political power has never been more evident. Let's hope that in this week we can pass these reforms and send a message to the American people that together we will work to ensure that our democracy is protected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions?
President Joe Biden said on Sunday in an interview that he is not sure whether he's going to run for re-election in 2024. And I'm curious if you both could comment on what you think of that, or whether he should run for re-election, or maybe pave the way for someone maybe younger, more diverse to run to help the party.
If President Biden chooses to run for re-election, I look forward to supporting him. But our focus right now is on continuing to communicate with the American people what the stakes are in November. Everything the American people care about is on the ballot in November. Democracy is on the ballot. Reproductive freedom is on the ballot. Gun safety is on the ballot. decency is on the ballot in November, and that's our focus.
Same answer.
We're gonna go, oh, actually,
Thank you. It's the inevitable immigration question. We've seen Martha's Vineyard, we've seen jetliners and buses. Why is it so difficult to find common ground with Republicans and really achieve some sort of immigration reform?
well, let me yield to Vice Chair Aguilar, who's been a leader on this issue.
I think, it's unfortunate that Governor DeSantis and others want to put politics and making a point ahead of these people's lives, threatening their safety, lying to them, ensuring that it's more difficult for them to make their immigration court hearing. Those are the types of things that are awful. They're inhumane. They're unproductive. I've been privileged to work with Republicans who want solutions. And there are some who want solutions, fixes for DACA, reform our broken system, ensure pathways for citizenship. The farm worker modernization bill that was sent out of the House and sits to this day at the Senate. There are reasonable reforms that we can enact. There are good policies that have bipartisan support. Folks don't always cover them, and that's fine. But the policies are out there. The political will on behalf of Senate Republicans isn't. There used to be a time when the Senate would work on these issues in a bipartisan way. Now they're fearful of Donald Trump's looming shadow in the next primary election, and that cripples their ability to work in a collaborative way, especially on this topic. We've seen it time and time again. House Republicans are going to produce legislation that, if it becomes law, will help people's lives, will fix this broken immigration system, and ensure that this is done with dignity. That's what we want to do. That's and unfortunately, there are too many people who want to get in that way.
Brief follow-up, because a lot of this predates Trump. Do you think things have gotten worse then as far as reaching an accord with Republicans?
Look, there were bipartisan, agreements in the Senate. Marco Rubio supported a bipartisan path to citizenship before he ran for president and backed away from it. Historically, there has been will until the politics have been injected, mostly by the Senate. The House can work to craft solutions. The will in the Senate with the 60 vote threshold does not exist.
Back.
Speaking of the Senate, they're working right now on a government funding bill that Senator Manchin wants to include permitting reform on. That's been controversial among some Democrats. Do you think there's a path that exists in the House and among Democrats for that to get through the House if they do end up passing that?
Well, there are ongoing negotiations between the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, to try to reach a four corners agreement to make sure that we can continue to fund the government. There are a variety of different issues that are part of that discussion. And until there's final text for us to review, I'll refrain from any additional comment.
Chairman Jeffries, so just to follow up on the immigration question, you had mentioned that, the vice chair had mentioned that it's kind of putting these immigrants' lives in danger by busing them and flying them across the country. On the same token, Republicans would argue that certain pull factors, providing them a pathway to citizenship, kind of encouraging them to come here illegally, would also put them in a dangerous situation by taking that trek because they are trying to flee, economic disparity and such. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the behavior of individuals like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott is radical, reckless, regressive, and reprehensible. They should start behaving like governors and stop behaving like human traffickers. They are putting politics over people in the most egregious way possible. The individuals who are being trafficked in many ways from the border and dropped off in various states across the country have fled repressive conditions, largely in Venezuela. And under our nation's laws, have a right to be heard in the context of any asylum proceedings that may subsequently take place. It was my understanding that these are individuals who claim to oppose everything that the Venezuelan government stands for at this particular point in time. But that doesn't matter to individuals like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott because they peddle in hatred and xenophobia and trying to exploit the fears of the American people. And that's incredibly irresponsible.
But do you think there's a better way to kind of go about it? Because, for instance, a lot of the times they become victims of cartels and they're, is there a better way to handle those asylum claims that are very real, while not allowing, while cracking down on cartels to make sure they don't fall prey to that?
We have a broken immigration system that does need to be fixed in a comprehensive and bipartisan fashion. But in order for that to occur, we need responsible partners on the other side of the aisle. And that doesn't exist right now. There's bipartisan legislation that is sitting in the United States Senate with respect to the Dream and Promise Act or farm workers or temporary protected status recipients that would go a long way toward improving our legal immigration system. But Republicans are blocking those efforts right now because they don't care about people. All they care about is politics. Okay.
You're the caucus chairman, you're the vice caucus chairman here. What sort of changes do you expect, whether Democrats win or lose at the end of the year here? Do you expect to move up? Do you expect the Speaker Pelosi, to stick around if they're in the minority? Do you expect her to not be Speaker if you have the majority? What's that going to look like here at the end of the year?
Our focus right now is continuing to deliver results for the American people, including by passing the Presidential Election Reform Act this week, making sure that we fund the government by the end of the month, and then taking our case to the American people with everything that we hold dear being on the ballot.
Will you run for leader if the Democrats are in the minority and she moves on?
Same answer.
But that's not clear. That's a different question.
Same answer.
Do you still anticipate any votes this work period on the policing bills and public safety bills?
There are ongoing conversations that are taking place right now with members who have been leading on this issue and outside stakeholders, including the civil rights groups. Those conversations have been fruitful, as I understand it, and it's my hope that common ground will be found in this area, as has been the case in so many other areas that we as Democrats have worked on throughout the 117th Congress.
Question for the Vice Chair. You guys have your, electoral contract bill, the Senate has their electoral contract bill. Are you concerned at all that if you two continue on your separate tracks, House passes your bill, Senate passes their bill, and there's no reconciliation between the two, that then you miss out on an opportunity to actually reform this before the midterms?
Failure is not an option. We've got to put a piece of reform on the president's desk. We've got to protect democracy. That's what all of us, that's what the entire Democratic caucus wants. That's what the January 6th committee members want. That's our focus. But, in the short term, let's see which chambers pass bills. I think that's important. Our bill, as it's written by Zoe Lofgren and Liz Cheney, is going to pass this chamber. I don't know what language will pass the Senate bill, whether there will be amendments or whether there will be changes. I don't know. I also don't know the 10 Republicans who have committed to vote for this. I don't think that's been made public. So let's let each chamber pass bills, and then let's see what the differences are between the two. We feel we have a strong work product, raising the threshold for objections, allowing the federal courts to play a bigger role if governors choose not to submit electors. I mean, these are significant changes that are not included in the Senate bill. We think we have a good work product. Chair Lofgren has worked incredibly hard with Vice Chair Liz Cheney on this, and we support that work product. Let's see what bills pass each chamber, though.
Are you expecting negotiations between the House and Senate in the future on this issue?
I read that Chair Klobuchar had a conversation with Chair Cheney this weekend about it. I assume they're having some conversations about the substance of the bills. But in the meantime, we're just looking to pass our bill this week, and then we'll see what they do in markup and what they can put on the Senate floor to pass.
Is there going to need to be a Puerto Rico financial assistance package? What does that look like? What's the time frame possibly attached to the CR?
Well, several members have, of course, raised the issue of making sure that we are there for the people of Puerto Rico during this hour of great need. And I certainly look forward to making sure that that is the case. This is an emergency situation. A lot of the damage and the needs are being assessed right now. And once we have some greater visibility in terms of the actual needs and what needs to happen at this moment in the context of relief and rescue, and then what needs to happen in terms of recovery and rebuilding, we can then comprehensively respond in a manner that is both humane and necessary.
On immigration, there are some Democrats who want to see some new money in the CR to help the migrants who have been relocated. Do you think there needs to be any money in the CR for helping secure the border a little better to stop some more of those, the influx that we're seeing?
Well, the negotiations are ongoing, between the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans. I'm not party to those negotiations directly. It's my understanding that the objective, which is to get a four corners agreement to try to prevent the government from shutting down, is usually brought about by trying to have the cleanest possible continuing resolution while still meeting the needs of the American people when emergencies arise. That's the context in terms of what actual substantive things make it into the continuing resolution. Given that context is unclear right now, but the mission is to make sure that the government does not shut down.
Economy question?
Well, let me go to the back, and then, okay.
Aside from the policing bill, the other piece of legislation that's kind of hanging out there that the frontliners want is the stock ban. And we know that Chairwoman Faulkner is writing that bill, but we haven't seen it yet. What is your understanding of what is holding that up? And what message would it send if, even House Democrats, one chamber, one party, can't agree on how to police itself on an issue that seems to resonate with voters?
Well, we await the opportunity to review the text that is being prepared by the administration committee under the leadership of Chairwoman Lofgren. I've indicated publicly I support the effort to enact a prohibition, and I look forward to reviewing the text when it's made public.
Do you think you vote this month?
That's unclear. A lot of it, of course, is triggered by the release of the text. It's hard to determine time frame other than there is a real desire to act and act swiftly that exists amongst a significant number of our members. Okay, last question.
Congressman, you mentioned at the top the falling gas prices, the job creation. Tomorrow we've got a Federal Reserve Board meeting with higher interest rates carry their own peril. Are the Democrats being held to blame for that by the electorate, and how do you counter that come November?
Well, we, of course, have fiscal policy that we're responsible for here in the United States Capitol. And then there's monetary policy, which is administered by the Federal Reserve. What we can do is control what we can control. And that's why our focus will continue to be on trying to decisively lower costs for everyday Americans, which is exactly what the Inflation Reduction Act was all about. Lowering energy costs by confronting the climate crisis in the most significant way in American history and unleashing the power of a clean energy economy. Strengthening the Affordable Care Act so we can lower healthcare costs, and of course, giving Medicare the ability to use its bulk price purchasing power to negotiate lower drug prices for millions of Americans. Those are important accomplishments for the American people, but the work, of course, continues as it relates to the fiscal policies that we, as members of the United States Congress, working in partnership with President Biden, who's done a very good job under difficult circumstances to continue getting things done for the American people. Thank you.